Welcome to Everyday Martial Artist, a weekly podcast where you'll join me, Brian Doucette, as I interview a different martial artist each episode and hear their story. Some guests you may have heard of, and some you probably haven't. Be sure to subscribe where all your favorite podcasts are available. Also visit our website at everydaymartialartist.com. If you're listening for a specific interview, I sure hope you'll stay and check out the other episodes. A very special thank you to Topher Williams for our custom theme music. And now, the newest episode of Everyday Martial Artist. Everyday Martial Artist is brought to you by KOOnline.com for all your martial arts needs. Sparring and safety gear, rank belts, uniforms, weapons, patches, and more. Wholesale supplies made by martial artists for martial artists. Visit us today at ko-online.com. Hello and welcome to Everyday Martial Artist. I'm your host, Brian Doucette, and like we do every Thursday, we're joined by a brand new guest talking about their life, their journey around the world of martial arts. My guest today has been a bouncer, a bodyguard. She's trained members of SWAT and Navy SEALs. She's been in movies like Batman Returns, Romy and Michelle, and TV series including Walker, Texas Ranger, and one of my favorites, Street Justice. She won 5 world titles as a professional kickboxer and became one of the top female fighters in the sport's history. In the ring, she earned nicknames like the Punisher, Queen of Mean, and Princess of Pain. She retired with an impressive 18-1 record. She's appeared on the cover of more than 35 magazines, been inducted into numerous sports Hall of Fames, including the Elias Sports Hall of Fame, Inside Kung Fu Hall of Fame, and Black Belt Magazine Hall of Fame. She provided commentary for the first ever UFC event, and in 2009 made her own MMA debut. Please welcome to the show today, Kathy Long. How are you doing today, Kathy?
I'm good. Boy, you've done your research.
I like to be prepared. So
there is one thing I need to correct, though.
Okay.
My record is not 18-1. It's much larger, but it's one of those things where I guess lots of people's records are public information, but
right
before there was documentation, and I had quite a few more fights than that, but it's okay.
I suppose. So what is the actual record then? I'm very curious.
Well, I guess if you combine all of the contact sports that I've been involved in, the record is more like 42-2.
Wow.
With one draw.
That's really cool. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, 42-3. I take that back because I did lose in a boxing match, which was a very defining moment. But we'll get to that a little later.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I did have the note about boxing on here, so yeah, we'll definitely get to that. But what we do with all my guests, we go back to the beginning. I want to know that first interest in martial arts, that first spark, and kind of talk about that first thing that got you involved in martial arts.
Well, I was 14 years old and just going into my freshman year in high school. A friend of mine in high school was studying Aikido on March Air Force Base from a man named Ron Granville. He was a postman by day and a Aikido instructor by night. Okay. And she invited me to one of her classes, and I fell in love with the nurturing and family structure that this man provided. He was very supportive and very caring about all of his students, and he really paid attention to all of them and really cared about their progress and what they did. And I didn't have much of a family structure at home, so I really clung to that. And it wasn't so much that I loved Aikido, I just loved the family structure that this guy provided. So I was one of those gym rats where I would be there before they opened and stay after everyone left and clean the place up and go, because he didn't charge me. I think the classes were literally $5, just a donation, a $5 donation. And, I couldn't even afford that. So he just said, no, it's okay. You can just come and train anyway. It doesn't matter. The interesting thing was I lived right next to March Air Force Base. The West Gate was separated by a fence between the trailer park that I lived in and March Air Force Base. And along the fence ran a huge ravine, which was not cemented. It was, just sand and dirt. But running perpendicular to the fence was a small gutter. And I used to crawl through that gutter to get under the fence, to get onto March Air Force Base, because I was not military. And I would crawl through that gutter for about 50, 60 feet. And I'd tilt my head up and look at the West Gate. And as soon as he wasn't looking, I'd jump up and I'd start walking toward the
Wow.
the area where they taught, because there were plenty of families who lived on the base, and I just acted like I lived there.
That's awesome.
Every day I would sneak home exactly the same way I came in.
And how long did that go on for?
Until I was 17.
Wow.
Yeah, and I never got caught, thank God. I imagine I would have gotten huge trouble because it was an active military base at that time. I don't
Okay.
think it's open now.
Okay. And that actually answered one of my next questions, because I was going to ask you what you liked about your first instructor, and you kind of explained that. And one of my other questions was what drew you to the style, but you kind of brought a very important point up, and just how important it is to find that right instructor. It's not always about the style. If you find that right instructor, the style might not matter as much, which is kind of what your story was, which was really cool.
Yeah, oftentimes as long as the child is learning and growing and evolving and having fun, especially with the kids having fun. I mean, I was a young adult, but at that time it was vital for me to stay in that atmosphere, in that environment, because he was just such a wonderful person. And everybody else in class was obviously the same way, because that's what he presented.
So then obviously you stuck with martial arts. So something, the instructor was the important part, but something must have stuck with the art itself, and that made you wanted to continue to study other martial arts. What came next then after the 3 years of Aikido?
What came next was when I was 17, my parents ran away from home. And let me back up a little bit.
Okay.
Starting at age 12, I used to babysit for this family that on Friday nights, they would go and donate plasma and get paid enough money to go to the movies or go to dinner and pay the babysitter, which was me, and then come back. And I really, really enjoyed that family because, like I said, I didn't have much of a family structure at home. And it was more of a dictatorship in my house. Kids were seen but not heard, and punishment was severe if you did anything wrong, and it was just not a good household to live in. I never quite really felt like I belonged there. But having said all that, when I was 14, they decided to move to Idaho. So at 14, in the summertime, I saved up enough money because I started working at other places. I took over my brother's paper route. I started mowing lawns in the trailer park that I lived in just so I could get extra money in the summertime so that I could pay for my clothes, pay for my school supplies. And I saved enough money to get a Greyhound bus to go from California to Idaho to go visit this family that I had babysat for, because they lived on a farm in Idaho. And they were just really wonderful people that I obviously gravitated to because of the way they were and the way they raised their children, and again, family structure, a really nice environment, and I learned an awful lot from them. So starting at age 14, I would take the bus in the summer, spend a month with them in this family in Idaho, and then take the Greyhound bus back home. When I was 17, came back home, my parents were gone. The house was completely empty, and I was left with, okay, now I need to find a place to live and find a job and finish school. Wow. And all of that was because my sister, I have a twin sister. Oh. When we were 15, she ran away from home and refused to come home because, she just got tired of the abuse and everything else. So when we were 17, my sister became an emancipated minor and was out of the quote unquote system because she went into foster care, and the state of California slapped my parents with a huge bill, and they decided to leave instead.
Wow. That's crazy.
It was crazy. But, I actually was partially relieved by the fact that I didn't have to be in that household anymore.
I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was happy to, I found a job, and one of my high school friends' older sister had already gone to college. So I asked that family if I could rent their bedroom for, they rented it for, I think, $200 or $250 a month. And I was able to pay for that with the job that I had. And I was going to college at night and high school during the day. And it was a good life. And then my friends introduced me to someone that they had a lot of respect for. He was a martial artist, and he was a black belt in Kung Fu Sansu. And I met him and then started training with him. We were training in the park because he didn't have a school at the time. And then we got together and we were boyfriend and girlfriend. And when I was 19, I left college and opened a martial arts school with him and fell in love with teaching. And through that, I also learned JKD and Kali and Wing Chun, several arts, because he used to drive to the Insano Academy.
Okay.
take lessons there and then come back. And not that you're supposed to do that, but he did. He would go there, take lessons, and then come back and teach us. But it was a great experience. And then during that time, I used to compete in forms, because in Kung Fu Sansu, we actually do place our fingers on people's eyes and drive their head back or hit them in the windpipe or hit them in the groins. That's why men and women always wore groin protectors, because understanding how the body reacts away from pain. When you strike somebody in the eyes, you can't strike them 3 or 4 more times afterwards, because if you're accurate and you're committed in that strike, their hands are going to go to the area that's hurt and they're going to reel away from the pain. And that's typically how that works. So when that happens, you are able to hit other centerline targets, or it just depends on what you want to go for. But once you hit somebody in the eyes, they'll create other targets for you to hit. And you then create a collision course, judging by how they're reacting away from pain.
Wow. Okay. I know you mentioned, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, please.
No, I was just going to say, you mentioned teaching. I'm just kind of curious. You opened your own school. What and you still teach to this day. What do you think's changed about your teaching style over the years? I'm curious.
That's a good question, because I was painfully shy when I was growing up. And as a young adult, I was the kind of person that would sit back and just watch and observe and be happy not to say a damn thing. So what forced me out of that shell literally was getting a job. When I was 18 or 19, I got a job hostessing. So I was forced to speak to people. And then after that, I got a job waiting tables. When I opened the school, I was happy that because I was already a black belt in Aikido, but I wasn't, it was just a white belt in Kung Fu Sansu. So I was happy to let him do the teaching and the speaking. But I watched and observed and listened. He was fortunately somebody who paid very close attention to detail. And he explained things in a way that people understood very well. I really enjoyed his teaching method because he left nothing unanswered or no questions. I learned a lot from him about what to do and what not to do.
Okay. What
to say and what not to say. So my teaching, I guess now is, I pride myself in understanding how an individual learns, because nobody learns the same way.
Right.
I mean, there are audio learners, visual learners, kinesthetic learners, and there are people who are combinations of 3 or 4 or whatever. And if you cannot convey the information to them in a way that they understand it the best, then you're stuck. And I really enjoy learning how to teach, because with every person that comes into the school, I learn something new and different.
Great answer. Now, you mentioned competing in. How did you do competing in forms?
I did okay. I mean, I'll just say I was okay.
Okay.
But what got me started in kickboxing was competing in forms. There was a girl who would come into these tournaments and she would compete in the point fighting, which I never saw that made any sense to me. I mean, point fighting is great in that it teaches you timing. With timing, you can pretty much do anything you want to do. I just never appreciated the deliberately missing your target, like that focused contact, because that teaches you bad habits in my mind. At that time, I was very opinionated about point fighting versus Kung Fu Sansu, for example. Kung Fu Sansu would not work in a tournament because I would stick my fingers knuckle deep in their eye and I would hit them in the windpipe. And these are areas you're not allowed to strike.
That would be bad.
However, our instructor was very good at forcing you to work with limitations. Okay, your left hand is broken and you're fighting 3 people, go. So you weren't allowed to use your left hand at all. And you had to, adjust and adapt. And that's one of the highest attributes of any fighter, is being able to adapt to any situation, being able to change. Yeah, you have your game plan, but you need to be able to work on the fly and be able to adjust and adapt and change as needed. So having said that, she would constantly invite me to do point sparring with her. And I said, no, you want to fight? Let's step out back.
Nice.
One day her instructor called my instructor and he said, hey, would Kathy be willing to do an exhibition kickboxing match with my girl? And Eric looked at me and he goes, what do you think? And I said, well, okay, so what are the rules? Well, you have to wear gloves and you're not allowed to hit the windpipe or the groin, or you're allowed to punch and kick as hard as you want to. And as soon as I heard those words, You're allowed to punch and kick as hard as you want to. And I thought, I'm in. Sign me up. Let's go. And I'd never done it before, and I only had 10 days to prepare.
Wow.
Yeah. She weighed 190. I weighed 120.
Wow.
Maybe.
Jeez.
Yeah. And I went in there and we just pounded the crap out of each other. At one point, because I really didn't know the rules all that well. At one point, she had bent down and I hit her with an uppercut, and then I reached my arm over her neck and I'm holding her head, like in a headlock, and I'm punching her, uppercutting her in the face. And Peter Cunningham was my referee, or our referee.
Oh, nice.
And he runs up and goes, no, you can't do that. It's against the rules. I said, oh, I'm sorry. Really sorry. I don't know the rules. And he's like, okay, just don't do that. All right. It was really funny.
That's awesome.
And that got me started in kickboxing. I was so scared. I was so scared that I'd look at her, and when the bell rang for that minute rest to sit down and get advice from your coach and get water, I'm standing there in the middle of the ring. Come on, you're going to sit down? Let's go, let's fight. You weigh a lot more than I do. Come on, you know this better than I have. You've been doing this for 2 years. What are you doing sitting down? And I'm just trying to make her feel bad because I was scared, trying to let her think that I was just this crazy maniac, kind of like what Muhammad Ali did with, I think it was Frazier.
That's great.
It was hilarious. But, the funny part, here's the really funny part about that. After the 3 rounds were done, now her school put on the event. Her school had all the judges. Her school, hired Peter Cunningham as their referee. So you know where this is going. Mm-hmm. When they invited us to have this match, it was an exhibition. Except that the announcer gets in there and he goes, give the ladies a hand, and we're tallying up the scores right now. So it'll just be a second. And I looked at the announcer and I looked at my instructor, Eric, and Eric immediately got up. He walked over to the guy. He placed his arm over his shoulder and he says, hey, buddy, I'll tell you what, this is an exhibition. And if you announce a winner right now, I'm going to break your arm right here and right now. So the guy says, give the ladies a hand. What an excellent exhibition. And there was no winner announced.
Did you ever find out who actually won?
I have no clue.
Okay.
All I know is that we pounded the crap out of each other, and I discovered something that I was hooked on adrenaline. It was the biggest adrenaline I had ever experienced at that time in my life. Since then, I have skydived and cliff dived and done all kinds of things as an adrenaline junkie. I've raced cars. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, but it's also pretty dangerous.
Oh yeah. So at this time then, was there even a female kickboxing division or league or anything?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I started kickboxing in 1987.
Okay.
So by 1990, there was tons of media coverage. ESPN was starting to have kickboxing bouts, and Showtime was, and there are all these other people who would televise it on pay-per-view events. So I was coming into kickboxing just when it started getting really popular.
Okay.
Which was a good thing, I guess, for me. I got a lot more media coverage than some of the other girls some of my predecessors who were, also highly skilled in their art or in their sport.
Nice.
Yeah. So I got lucky.
So back then, it's so different with combative sports. I mean, you look at like something like the UFC, there's guys who fight once or twice a year. Like on average, how many fights were you doing a year when you, like the heyday of kickboxing? I couldn't tell you,
but all I know is that I trained 6 days a week, every single day of the year, except for, the days that I was off, which is Sunday. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it was 365 days. What is 365 minus, 4 Sundays a month? So it was pretty much every day.
Yeah.
Sunday was my only day of recovery, which, really wasn't enough. But when I decided to turn pro, I took it very seriously. And I thought, okay, if this is my profession and I am a professional at what I'm doing, I have to make sure that I'm always ready if a promoter calls and asks my coach, trainer, boyfriend, martial arts instructor, hey, we'd like to have Kathy Long on the show next month, or in 2 weeks, or in 1 week, or whenever. And Eric would say, yep, she's ready.
Wow. So it didn't matter who, you were just ready no matter who the opponent was.
Absolutely.
That's impressive.
I took it seriously. I was like, this is my job. And, if you're going to do your job right, if you want to become a world champion, then you have to be ready at all times. And that meant that I trained, and a lot of people would say I overtrained. But the good thing about me is that I knew that I was ready no matter what.
So then how long before you won your first world championship?
I started kickboxing in 1987. I turned a pro in 89, if I recall correctly. And I won my first title in 1990.
Oh, wow. So,
yeah.
Right after
I did everything backwards. I had my first fight after 10 days. And then I had a handful of amateur fights. And then I turned pro against a girl who was 18-2. And I lied to the promoters and said I was 6-0 as a pro, but they had no way of looking into it to see if it was true. Right.
Yep.
And this is where, people's records can be boosted up or, taken down, in that I had also gone to Mexico and had several fights there, but there was the State Athletic Commission wasn't doing drug tests back then. Right.
Oh, wow.
And there were people who, they would travel to other states and other countries and fight, but they would come to their fight and say, "Oh, I'm only 4-1," when actually they're 20-1 or 25-1, because they've had quite a bit of experience. And I've seen this over the years where people will say, "Yeah, I've only had 5 pro fights," when they've had 25 pro fights, and they do that because they want to make sure they win.
Right.
So they'll deliberately fight a guy who is legitimately 2-1 as a pro when they're 25-1 as a pro.
Yeah, that's wrong.
I did it backwards. And I was 0-0 as a pro, and I said, "Oh, I'm 6-0 as a pro," because I just wanted to be able to get that fight. And it was, they were offering decent money.
So what was like a prize purse back then for winning? Did you get a different amount to win, or was it just you got paid this much to fight back then?
You got paid whatever it was to fight, no matter what.
Okay.
Win or lose, as long as you showed up and you fought, you showed up and you were at weight, you were good.
Okay.
My world title fights were maybe 10,000, maybe. Oh. Even though all my sparring partners were men,
yeah.
Which I'm grateful for, but that's where I sustained a lot of my injuries, was fighting them, because I'd get in the ring to spar with them, and they would beat the shit out of me until I figured it out. Yeah, it was a rough road, a really rough road. I sustained a lot of serious injuries, but for my first world title fight, it was in Las Vegas at Caesar's Palace, and I walked into that fight with broken ribs.
Really?
Yep.
Dang, that had.
And I wasn't about to tell anybody.
I suppose, yeah. Yeah,
because I knew they'd postpone it, and this is a world title fight. I'm like, this is my first world title fight. I said, hell no, I'm not going to tell anybody I have broken ribs. So that was a very rough fight.
Wow.
I'm lucky. I'm really lucky in that I'm one of those fighters that doesn't feel pain during the fight because of adrenaline. And I knew that about myself. So I also knew that while I was fighting, I'd be fine as long as I could breathe and, I could protect the left side of my ribs. I'd be okay.
Okay. Good. So what made you decide to jump into the boxing ring then?
I had gotten out of kickboxing for a little while. I shot a few low budget films. I was starring a couple, and, I just had the itch to fight again. And, I just reached out to Freddie Roach, actually, and who's a good friend. And I just told him, I'd love to do some training with you. And he didn't necessarily train me, but I came across a coach that I really appreciated working with, and he was really good at what he did. But we trained a lot at Freddie Roach's gym in Los Angeles at the time. And, I did some sparring with, quite a few fighters whose names are escaping me. But it was a lot of fun. And the better I got, I entered this little mini tournament, and this was around 1998. There was I liked boxing, but it wasn't nearly as open as kickboxing or Muay Thai. I was used to working with limitations, so I understood that, I couldn't kick, and I never had the desire to kick while I was boxing, which is good, but it was kind of limiting in my mind.
How did the UFC thing come about when you for UFC #1? Is that something, did someone reach out to you? Did you approach them?
someone reached out to me.
Okay.
And they asked if I'd be willing to color commentate. And I was still very shy, but I'd certainly gotten better at learning to do interviews
Mm-hmm.
and talking to people. By that time, I had definitely felt better about talking. I said yes, of course. So it was a good opportunity. And I got to tell you, when I showed up in Colorado, and I was there, several days before, so that we could get used to get the backstory of all the fighters who were there, the Gracies, and that sort of thing. And I remember sitting in the rules meeting before the fight, or before the event began, and I remember. Again, I'm forgetting his name. That's interesting. I don't know why I keep forgetting names, but the boxer who was there, he kept saying, "Okay, so what do I do? Do I wrap my hands, and do I have to wear gloves?" And like, no, you don't have to wear gloves. Okay, so then do I wrap my hands and wear one glove, or do I just wear my hand wraps? And he kept asking, various questions about the gloves, because he's a boxer.
Right.
And their answer was, "I don't know." And I'm thinking,
Wow.
oh my God, we're at the freaking rules meeting. This is not good.
That was Art Jimerson, if I remember. He was the guy.
Art Jimerson, yes.
Yeah, the guy that wore the single boxing glove in there. That was hilarious.
Yes, because that was his choice, to wear a single boxing glove, and have the other hand free to do what? I don't know. These poor guys, they had no clue what they were getting into. They had no idea. They didn't know what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was.
Right.
And the only other person besides, there was Ken Shamrock. He had done Sambo.
Yep.
So he was very familiar with that style of fighting, and maybe not as adept in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but certainly knew holds and locks and leverage.
Mm-hmm. Pretty
good at that. The sumo wrestler, he had no clue what he could do and what he couldn't do. And when he asked a question, again, the answer was, "I don't know."
Wow. That's crazy.
And I'm thinking to myself, we're at a rules meeting, for Christ's sake, people.
Wow. So what were your just overall thoughts of the first ever UFC? I mean, just being there, that part of history, what, just if you remember your thoughts as you're watching it, what was going through your head?
At that time, because, I was also not very familiar with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu,
Mm-hmm.
I just thought, okay, I get it. It's the Gracie show, and they are going to weather whatever storm they can to get inside. And as soon as they get a hold of you, they're going to have their way with you, because nobody else understands this art and how to combat it. And I just thought, oh, okay, so it's a setup.
Yep.
That was my idea. I mean, not that they were paying anybody to take a dive, but what they were picking people who had no clue how to deal with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Right.
Which I thought was grossly unfair.
Yeah. I mean, they picked people they knew had no chance of winning.
Yes, exactly. And I was really turned off by it, even though I did some judging, or I think it was judging on another event that was very similar to that. It was just a bloodbath. And I can't remember the name of that event. It's been a while.
Yeah.
I've slept since then.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, the sport has definitely changed over the decades. I mean,
boy, has it. I think the way it is now it's a very well-rounded art, a well-rounded sport, I should say. And if you have a deficit in one aspect or another of that art, you will be exposed and you will be taken down for it.
Definitely.
Yeah. And now, it's not so one-sided. It's not so lopsided. I remember for a little while there, the more I watched it, the more, disheartened and discouraged I was by the fact that, the Gracies were just taking that sport by storm, but it was their sport and they created it. And it was sometime later when I finally saw Kickboxer starting to take a little bit of control over the art, in that they had superior footwork, and if the jiu-jitsu person wasn't able to get in close enough to get them to the ground, they would eat punches and kicks.
Yep.
I was happy to see that change, that shift. It's like, okay, finally, these kickboxing folks are learning enough Brazilian jiu-jitsu to defend themselves, and then use their footwork to make sure that guy doesn't take them down. And then, of course, it just got better. There was people who were doing judo coming in, people doing wrestling coming in. And the more different styles of arts that came in, that got involved in the UFC, the more it forced everybody's hand to be good at everything, not just one thing.
Right.
And I really appreciated that.
Nice. So what made you want to jump into the octagon and actually do an MMA fight?
Well, I'd had the desire once I started watching the UFC again, and I just thought, I can do that. I'm pretty damn sure I can. And I was in my 40s at the time. And Josh Barnett, I was teaching at the Tap Out Gym in downtown Los Angeles. And Josh Barnett was bringing his crew in there to train. Now, I had trained with Gokor and Eric Polson, quite a few other people. But because I was there teaching at the Tap Out Gym, Eddie Bravo was there with his, he had his headquarters set up in downtown LA at the Tap Out Gym, and Josh was bringing in his fighters. I remember coming over there and, I introduced myself to Josh, and he goes, I know who you are. And I just sat there one day, trying to figure out how I could ask if I could please join in on their training, because I really wanted to have another fight. And, it took me, I think, a month to get up the courage to ask him. And I said, so I don't suppose I'd be able to train with your guys and learn more. He goes, of course.
Nice.
I mean, it was that easy, that simple, done. Right. And I was training with Gokor when I had my first fight. And Batiste Mansouri was another person that I'd been training with. So between Batiste Mansouri and Gokor, and the Gracies were that at Batiste Mansouri's school. I was doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu classes, and they were the ones who got me into my first fight. And I remember Romeo Rem standing there and looking at me, and the very last thing that was said to me before I walked into the cage, he looked at me and he goes, do not end up on your back. Do you understand me? And when I heard those words, they stuck in my head. And I thought, okay, so if you had watched the fight, the first MMA fight that I had, if you had watched it, she took me down and I felt my back hitting the mat. And those words were coming into my head. Do not end up on your back. And I thought, no. It's like, how do I reverse this? So when she got me down, I just thought, keep rolling. And then I ended up on top and we worked from there. But, it was
that's awesome.
Very funny, the things you remember when you're in your fight. Because his words were just right in my ear as my back is hitting the mat. Do not end up on your back.
Nice.
I thought, no. Yeah.
That's awesome. So to back up a little bit, how did you end up getting involved in movies and TV show? I mean, I know you've done acting, you've done stunts. How did that come about?
Well, after I got a phone call from Benny the Jet Urquidez, who said that he had worked on the first Batman movie. Mm-hmm. This is where Tim Burton was directing. Yep. And he called me and said, hey, they're going to start a second one. And they're looking for a fight double for Michelle Pfeiffer to act as, to train her. And he goes, I'm going to put your name in the hat and let you go and audition, and I'll set that up for you. And I said, wow, okay, sure. Why not? What the heck?
Nice.
So jumped in my car. I drove from Bakersfield all the way to Burbank. And I remember walking into Warner Brothers, and they had told me that it's this building, this numbered building, and this numbered room, and gave me a map. And as I started walking through, I was instantly lost, like totally lost. It's like Warner Brothers is huge. So I'm walking around and I'm seeing all these buildings, and I'm trying to figure out, how to get to the one I'm supposed to go to meet with the stunt coordinator or the fight coordinator. Yeah, he's the stunt coordinator. And I see this pleasant-looking young man with straggly hair, and he's got a button-up shirt with skulls all over it and baggy pants, and he kind of looked like a gopher boy. And I said, excuse me, sir, would you happen to know where this building is? Because I'm a little lost. And he looked at it and he goes, oh, sure, I know right what this is. So he started walking me over there, and he goes, so what are you here for? I said, well, I'm hoping to audition for being Michelle Pfeiffer's fight double and work with her. And he goes, oh, fantastic. Okay. So we're walking, and he goes, it's that building right there. You take the stairs. It's the first door on your right. I said, wow, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. He goes, okay, good luck. So I knock on the door. The guy says, yeah, come on in. So I walk in, and this is right before my fight on Showtime against a woman named Nora Daigle. So I was still in fantastic shape. And I walked in wearing a tank top and shorts, and I was shredded. I had about a 5% body fat at the time. And I walked in, and Max Clevens looked at me and he goes, oh my God, not another fat chick. Can you just go lift a weight or something and then come back? And I laughed, and he laughed. And I said, oh, you mean the Oreos I've been eating are finally showing? He goes, all right, kid, what do you got? And so I handed him a VHS tape of one of my fights. So that's all I had. And, I had never done an audition before. I never knew what was entailed. I had no clue what was going on. Way over my head. Way over my head. So I handed him this VHS tape, and he goes, oh, okay. So he puts it in the player that he had, and he's watching my fight, and the phone rings. He picks up the phone, and he goes, yeah. And he goes, oh, yes, sir. Yes, of course. Yeah, I can do that. No problem. And he hangs up the phone. Now, this isn't word for word, but, he goes, all right, kid, I need you to go downstairs to that grassy area and, do your thing. Let me see what you can do in the air. And I said, sure. So I ran downstairs, and I'm shadowboxing. And I'm throwing punches and kicks and knees and elbows, and I'm moving around. And I see the young man who had showed me where the building was. So I thought to myself, all right, well, if I'm being filmed, let's just say I'm being filmed in my mind, I can't look at the camera, so I just got to do my thing. And I just kept moving, kept shadowboxing, and I saw the guy out of my peripheral, but I didn't want to focus on him. And then the guy, Max Clevens, he goes, hey, all right, come on upstairs. So I run upstairs, and I walk in the door. He goes, okay, so Wednesday, I want you to come back. We're going to do a wardrobe fitting, and you're going to meet Michelle. We're going to make sure we measure everything. We got to get these costumes. And I looked at him and I said, I'm sorry, what? He goes, you got the job, kid.
Nice.
Just like that.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was very cool. And I was stunned. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to do. And I just thought, okay, now what? What do I do? Right? Because come back on this day. And then I realized, okay, this is about a week or so, or not quite a week. This was about 2 weeks, literally, before I was supposed to fight on Showtime. And I thought, crap. Okay, so I went to the production company, and I said to them, hey, I've got a fight on Showtime up in Lake Tahoe, and I need some time to acclimate, and I can't work with Michelle right away. Is it okay if I have this fight, and then I promise I won't have any more fights during the filming or anything else? I'll just make sure that, after this fight, I'll wait, and I'll postpone everything else, or I'll just cancel any other fight that comes up. I won't take it. And they're like, okay, we can do that, no problem. So go have your fight, and then when you come back, we'll get started on everything. But I still had a little bit of time to go and meet Michelle and get fitted for the cat costume, because they had to measure. I mean, they measured the circumference of your wrist, from your wrist to your elbow, from your elbow to your shoulder, how big your biceps were, wow, how broad your shoulders were, everything. They measured everything to make sure that costume fit perfectly. And I remember here I am in Lake Tahoe, and it's a couple days before the fight. I get a phone call from Warner Brothers saying that Michelle wants me to come over there and do a training session with her. And I said, when? Tomorrow? Tomorrow. What time? I can't remember. It was like 1:00 in the afternoon or something like that, 1 or 2. And I said, yeah, I'll be there. No problem. I didn't go into, well, I talked to the producers, and they said I didn't have to come until afterwards. And I didn't say any of that. I just thought, crap, Michelle Pfeiffer wants me there. Crap, I got to go.
Okay.
I gotta go. So I hang up the phone, and I go to my trainer, and between my trainer and several other people who came with us, we all scraped together whatever money we could to get me a flight from Lake Tahoe to Burbank. And I called a couple friends of mine, and they loaned me a car so that I could drive into Warner Brothers to go train with Michelle. But I remember while I was in the airport, I see this mug, and on the mug, it's a white mug with a black cat all hunched up and looking really fierce and angry. And the caption beneath the cat read, "Piss me off, suffer the consequences."
Nice.
And I saw the mug and I went, oh my God, this is perfect. I'm going to give this to Michelle. And I grabbed the mug and it's still in its box and packaging, and I put it in a bag and I drive into Warner Brothers. And this time I wanted to make damn sure that they literally guided me to wherever the training session was going to be held, because I did not want to get lost. So they literally, with a Sharpie and a highlighter, marked out the whole route. So I trot up to the door and I'm about to knock on the door, and the door's ajar. And inside I hear Michelle Pfeiffer, who I think is Michelle Pfeiffer, but she's really, really angry and upset over somebody who had done something to really mess up. I can't remember what it was, but it was just, she was so angry. She was yelling on the phone, and I'm about to knock on the door, and I think to myself, oh, crap, I'm showing up when she's really angry, and this is not going to bode well. So I kept waiting for a natural break in the conversation or her yelling, and there came one, and I knocked on the door really quickly, and she goes, hold on. Oh, this is probably my trainer, so I got to go. We'll get back to this afterwards. So she hangs up the phone. She walks up, she opens the door, she looks at me, and the first words out of her mouth were, oh my God, how much did you hear? It must have been the look on my face. Because in my mind, I'm going, wait a minute, I just knocked on the door. So it must have been the look on my face. And she's looking at me like, oh crap. And I said, I heard just enough to know that somebody really messed up really bad, and I'm sorry that happened.
Wow.
So I kind of tilted my head down and held up the mug, and I said, but I got you a gift. And she grabbed the mug and she's looking at it, and she tears open the box and looks at the cat. And she goes, oh my God, this is perfect. Absolutely perfect. She goes, this is amazing. Where did you find this? I said, I found it in the airport in Burbank. She goes, oh my God, thank you so much. And that immediately broke the ice, and it went really smoothly from there, really smoothly. It was just a nice way of, I guess, getting her out of her angry moment.
That's cool. I actually still remember, I probably still have the issue, the Black Belt article about you getting the stunt role in that movie. So that was pretty cool. We were pretty excited about that when that came out. And I remember going to the movie trying to pick out, all right, I think that's Kathy. So
anytime you saw me from behind,
yep,
it was definitely me.
Cool.
But there were a few times where you saw, a quarter angle of me or a front of me, because I had to wear her nose every time we did shooting.
Ah, okay.
Because her nose was a bit larger than mine, and I have a very tiny nose, so I had to wear a prosthetic.
Okay.
And one of the most wonderful experiences was while I was getting my prosthetic nose put on, at the same time, Danny DeVito was getting his penguin outfit and his nose and everything else put on.
Okay.
So we would sit and talk, and he was just a sweetheart, an absolute sweetheart of a guy.
That's awesome. Man, that's what an experience. It
really was. I mean, the first time ever working on a film, and first time trying to figure out how to choreograph fight scenes in a film, especially of that caliber. And, Tim Burton was just such a delight to work with. I mean, he was so creative and so fun to be around. He was like a little kid, just, bouncing around everywhere, having a blast, doing this and that. And I think one of my favorite experiences was walking into Warner Brothers soundstage that was completely empty. And then within a few months, you had a full working city.
Wow. With
traffic lights, streets, sewer pipes. I mean, buildings. Some were just a facade, and some were, actually functioning buildings with plumbing and electricity and everything else. Crazy cool. It was amazing.
So question now, this is kind of shifting gears a little bit. And you kind of touched on this a little bit in the beginning when you talked about your first instructor. But let's say a friend approaches you or someone asks you, they've never done martial arts in their life and they're thinking of getting involved in martial arts. What are some tips you'd give them on what to look for in an instructor and in the school, and maybe some things to avoid?
Okay. One of the first things I would ask them is, what is your interest in martial arts? What do you want to accomplish with it? What do you want to learn from it? Because, when you become a martial artist, it becomes a lifestyle, and it does have an effect in everything else that you do in your life. For example, when I tell people my students, I say, apply your Kung Fu. They go, what do you mean, Sifu? Well, okay. So you work in a store, and in that store, do you do the absolute best you possibly can in whatever your job position is? Or do you just slough it off and do half-ass it? It's the sort of thing that, the standards that I hold you by when you come to my class are the standards you need to take with you when you go to everything else that you do. Every task that you do it the absolute best way you possibly can, because you wouldn't slough it off in class here. I digress. So anyway, I would ask them what they're interested in learning. How to defend yourself. Do you want to get into tournaments? Do you want to, do forms? If somebody doesn't know absolutely anything about martial arts, that would be one of the first questions I'd ask them. What do you really want to learn from martial arts? Depending on their answer, I would suggest that they find an instructor that is, one, open-minded, two, really cares about the people that come into the school. I mean, if they just want to get into martial arts because they don't feel they're really good at sports or anything else, they would find an instructor where the group of people, like what I experienced when I was 14, was, everybody took an interest in what you did and how you did it and how well you learned, and they helped you in every aspect. And if you can find a place where you feel at home, quote unquote, and you're comfortable, and you feel like you're part of a family, then stick with that.
That's a great answer. So if you had to pick one martial artist that you truly admire, whether it's someone you've actually met and trained with or just someone you've looked up to your whole life, can you pick one?
I don't think so, because there are too many. Not that I would name a name, but it's just that there are martial artists who, embody the spiritual aspect of it, the medicinal aspect of it, holistic aspect of it, not just the martial aspect of it. And, in order to be a well-rounded martial artist, you can't just focus on destroying your opponent without knowing how to help them and how to repair.
Okay.
Because there has to be both. You can't just learn how to destroy people without knowing how to help them as well. Because it's not about fighting, even though you break down the word martial, and it's the god of war, which is Mars, but it's also about learning how to elevate people. I mean, Lao Tzu said, if you want to learn how to lead people, follow behind them.
Good answer. Is there a philosophy you learned in all your years of martial arts that is really important to you that you still teach to your students today?
I encourage my students to become as well-rounded as they possibly can. So not just in martial arts, but in life in general. And I'm not saying, well, I don't know, it's multifaceted, because when I was working with fighters, starting from the very beginning to, I had one fighter that started with me and he's now fighting in the UFC. It's one of those situations where I say, don't settle, because being comfortable can become a drug. Once you get used to it, it's very addicting, highly addicting. And if you settle for just enough, then you'll never understand. I mean, being pushed beyond your comfort zone is one of the best things you can possibly do as an individual and as a martial artist.
Right.
And I think the comfort zone is where dreams go to die.
Okay.
Now, the whole time I was training in martial arts, kickboxing, when I met this guy, Eric, he became horribly abusive, and he was very insecure, and learning from him, learning about life just by the experiences that I had, it was one of the roughest experiences I've ever gone through. I mean, when I tell people I've been through hell, I've been, and coming out the other side, I understand now. I understand how people can, be crushed. I understand that it's really important to support people in what they want to do. They may not be world-class status, but they're, trying to achieve something to the best of their ability. And my job is to support that and encourage that and help them in any way I possibly can.
Nice. All right. I have 3 more quick ones, and these ones, they're kind of fun questions, and your answer can't be one of the ones you were involved with if you were. So do you have a favorite martial arts book?
I have to say The Art of War is a very good book, but It's not my favorite. It's very difficult for me to say I have a favorite of anything, because there's lots of good books out there, and it just depends on the individual who's reading it. Because The Art of War may not make much sense to one person, but makes perfect sense to another. That's a hard one, because I don't have a favorite, and there's many things I don't have favorites in.
Okay.
Which can be frustrating as an answer. I'm sorry.
Right. Well, these last 2 might be tough too then, because the next one is a favorite martial arts TV show. And if you can't think of a favorite, maybe like a guilty pleasure, like if you're watching TV and a rerun of the show comes on, you're going to watch it. If you can't pick one, if you can, 2 or 3 of your top ones, maybe.
Did you ever see the series The Green Arrow?
I loved it. Yes.
Yeah, me too.
Yep.
Something I appreciated about the actor was that, he had the physicality and he moved well. And you can tell that in that series, he took what he did very seriously. I appreciated that. I appreciated the fact that, when he was in that job, he was absolutely 1000% in that job.
Oh, I agree.
And did absolutely everything he could to be that character. And I thought that he did a fantastic job, both with the physical aspect of it and the acting aspect of it. And I just thought, okay, the story is what it was, and some of it, sometimes it took kind of a left turn, but overall, him as a character, I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, and Stephen Amell did great in that show. It's one of my favorite series, so I agree completely.
Yeah, there you go. Me too. It is one of my favorite series. If I'm going to have a favorite, we'll just stick with that one. Okay. How about that?
Perfect. And then final one. How about a favorite martial arts movie? And if you're like me, my favorite changes every few weeks, probably. My go-to is always The Karate Kid for me, because that's the movie that got me started in martial arts. So that one always has, because I literally, and I've told the story before, but I literally went to the opening weekend with my friends, and there was a local martial arts instructor handing out free passes outside of the movie theater after the movie ended, which is great marketing in 1984. So that one always has a special place in my heart. So I have met many other that I love and I'll watch whenever they're on, but that's always goes to the top of my list because of that reason.
There's so many wonderful messages in that movie. It's definitely a good one, but I can't say I have a favorite. But on the top of the list, on one of the top ones on that list is definitely that one.
Nice.
Because of the message, because of the creativity and how they got this kid to become more than what he thought he could be. And I really appreciated that.
So I have to ask, have you watched the new Cobra Kai at all?
No.
Okay. That's one of the guilty pleasures one. That's probably one of my favorite shows right now. I watch it.
Is it?
When the new season came out, I watched it in a day.
So how was it? Is it any
I love
good?
it. It's 4 seasons in. I love the nostalgia. One thing I did was when I knew it was coming out, I went and rewatched the original 3 movies first right away, just so they'd be fresh. I watch them anytime, once a year anyway, but I wanted them fresh in my head so I catch all the little things. And I've talked to people who watch the series and haven't rewatched or have never seen the originals, and I'm like, you're missing so much little tiny inside jokes that you're not catching and stuff. And it's great anyway, but if you're gonna watch it, watch the original first, and you'll pick up so much more. But it's fun. It's just fun seeing those characters, and they keep bringing back more characters from the movies in each season and stuff. And they brought back Ali, they brought back Terry Silver. So it's it's cool. It's been fun. I enjoy it, and I watch it with my daughter. Me and my 15-year-old daughter. It's kind of our favorite show to watch together, and we're already waiting for season 5. So,
do any of your kids do martial arts?
They have actually. Right now, not currently. All 3 of them did. They all started traditional Taekwondo when they were 5. Oldest son got to his 3rd degree junior black belt. My middle son got to his 2nd degree junior black belt. My daughter got to her 1st degree junior black belt. They're involved in so much other things that they, at some point, right around the age of 14, 15, they all quit. My daughter quit when she was about 12 and actually came back to it early this year, and then got busy with theater, but I'm hoping she'll come back to it again because she really wants to get her adult black belt. So I'm hoping she'll come back and do it. And I'd love all of them to come back to it at some point. I know my middle son said he really missed it, but he does 3 sports. He does theater, he does speech, he does choir. So he's a busy kid. But,
yeah, it sounds like it. But, in that respect, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
It really is a good thing.
But they all loved it when they did it. They all, love our instructor and stuff, and even got my mom involved. My mom joined in her 40s and got her black belt. So
yay.
Yeah. I tried to talk her into it for a year, and she always said she was too old. And she came to a demonstration we did at a fair, and there was one of our students, Miss Edith was her name. She was 73 going for her black belt, and my mom joined. She's like, if she can do it, I can do it. So she joined the next day. It was kind of cool.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So it's and my wife did it, when she was younger too, and I'd love for her to get back into it, but I don't think that's in the cards. So yeah.
Do you still currently train?
When I can. It's right. The last few years, it's just been busy with kids running around to their events. Luckily, the school I train at is right near my full-time job, so I'll go there on a lot of my lunch breaks and just kick the bag and stretch and jump rope and nice. when my daughter came back, it was great because then I could jump back in and start help teaching class again. And so yeah, when she can go back, I can go back because I don't have to run her around every place. So, but yeah, no, it's always been a part of my life. I've been with that instructor since '94. I've been in martial arts since '84. So nice. Yeah, I'll always come back to it at some point, injuries or not.
Yeah, I started martial arts, 1970 something.
Okay.
When did I start high school? I'm trying to remember. I think I started high school 79.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Not to make you feel bad, but I was born in 74. So
I'm just 10 years older. That's all.
Yeah, that's not bad. No,
not too bad.
Yeah.
No.
And I started martial arts in '84, and I started radio in '89, and finally was able to combine the two together after many years of trying. I actually tried to get this as a radio show back in the 90s, and the station I worked at did not think people would listen to a martial arts radio show. So kept it in my back pocket. And when COVID hit, I'm like, I'm just going to do it as a podcast. So, and it was born. That's perfect. And yeah, now it's coming in almost a year because it's, let's see, you're going to be episode number, I think you're going to be episode number, 48 or 49. So I got to look at my list, but so yeah, I've been lucky enough to have people say yes and willing to tell their stories. And it's been a nice mixture of known martial artists and unknown martial artists. I've interviewed most of my previous instructors, interviewed some authors, some motivational speakers, and it's just a nice mixture, and it's been fun letting people tell their stories. So
yay. Well, there's so much more to the story, but you only have so much time, right?
Exactly. And like I said, encourage people to follow you on social media if they want to and stuff. And any of those links, I'll put them in the show notes for anything and that you want me to promote, and maybe put some links to some of your fights on there if I can find some of those on YouTube and stuff.
They're all over YouTube.
Oh,
you'll
perfect.
have no problem finding them.
Perfect.
I don't know who put them on there, but there's so much of my stuff on there. I have no clue.
That's awesome.
Who did that or what? But I'm grateful. I'm super grateful because, a lot of people, after they hear about me or they meet me, they'll look me up on YouTube or Google, especially YouTube, and they'll go, "Oh my God, I had no idea."
Yep.
I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, the internet can be a wonderful thing sometimes. So
sometimes it can, yeah. But if anybody wants to book me for seminars or anything like that, just they can reach me through the school I'm teaching in now is the Seattle Wushu Center. So it could be, I think the website is seattlewushu.org or my email, if you're willing to give that out. It's my name, Kathy Long. And then the initials EMA, as in Evolving Martial Arts, at gmail.com.
Yeah, no, I will post anything you want me to post. I will put it on there when the show comes out in a few weeks and send people. I'd love to talk to some local instructors about bringing you in for a seminar. I think that'd be fun to try to do. So
I would love that too. Cool. Thank you. I appreciate it.
But once again, I just want to thank you for your time. I know we kind of went back and forth for a while. We were both kind of busy, and finally we're able to pick a day that made it work. So I'm glad we were able to do this. And I've loved hearing your story and been a fan for a long time. And we'll continue to follow you and promote your stuff. So
You're very kind. I appreciate that. Thank you.
thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist. We hope you will join us every week for a brand new episode with a different martial artist telling their story. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave us a review. Also, be sure to check out our website at everydaymartialartist.com. There you can find all of our episodes and contact us to suggest guests and ask questions. Again, thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist, and we'll see you next week.